Let's see what we got when we press go live. Let's see what happens here. Looks like it worked. What is going on, everyone? I think I'm live here now, and let's just double check. It looks like we're good. So, I wanted to go over a couple things, and I got a couple questions on the past video and via DM about this concept of covering Andrew Yang and why I'm doing it, and just my rationale behind it. And the main rationale behind me covering a lot of things around his policies is because he was an econ major and his policies are connected to a lot of different economic theories that people have put forward in the past. A lot of very famous economists have put forward some of these things in the past that just kind of got brushed under the rug and never really got discussed at large mainstream scale, like what he's doing right now. And that's why I'm talking about it. I think it's interesting. I'm not like fully endorsing Andrew Yang by any means, and I'm not endorsing any of these candidates. Uh, not a politician or anything like that. I'm just an economics nerd, and I love talking about this stuff. So that's just to preface this. So there's no like weird shadow money or something like that going behind the scenes here. Um, what I wanted to talk about was the economics, crimes, and the making taxes fun, which I really enjoy. That was actually a Norm Chomsky suggestion. If you guys are not familiar with Norm Chomsky, you should definitely Google him right now. He is a very, very infamous economist and a brilliant guy. He is a very, very special person. And there's also a movie called Captain Fantastic with Viggo Mortensen in it, and he says that there should be a Norm Chomsky Day, and it's a celebration about his ideals and things like that for helping the people be in control of their own economy. And that that's very kind of similar in the same tunes of what we're seeing with this making taxes fun. And I love this proposal. This is pretty fantastic that he's doing this, where everyone has a celebration when you're paying taxes. Because Norm Chomsky, he actually mentions in a bunch of his lectures that I've watched, he mentions like, why is it that everybody's so bummed out on tax day every year? Like everybody should be excited. Everybody should be stoked to be putting in money into a system that helps support the less fortunate and allows the capitalistic engine turn and move, and that it should be a celebration. And I found it fascinating that the concept is so foreign to everyone. Everybody's bummed to pay taxes, and it's such a fun twist. And I definitely know that this is inspiration from Norm Chomsky, which is saying a lot about Yang and his team and his policies. Because to attract an econ nerd like myself, that's very interested in things like this and have been forever, as long as I can remember. It's just cool to see this at scale in front of a national stage, international stage at this point, and people are really looking into this stuff, and that's why I like going through all of his policies. So let's go through exactly what it says. Currently paying taxes is a slog. True. Instead, let's make it a celebration. This is going to Norm Chomsky. Revenue Day. The day taxes are due should be a federal holiday. That day should feature celebrations. Each American should be able to direct 1% of their taxes to a specific project. So this is, there was actually a joke a couple years ago that said like, hey, you get itemized receipts for everything in business when you want to do like write-offs for taxes and all that good stuff. I'm not a CPA or anything like that, but you need receipts and itemized receipts when you're doing expense reports for companies. When you work for large organizations, you need to have an itemized receipt to get your expenses paid for by an organization. And with taxes, there's no itemized receipt. It's just like firing money into a black hole, And the idea is that you just trust that they're doing well by your tax money. So I love this concept of where your taxes are going roughly, but then at least 1% you're actually redirecting yourself. Like you're pointing to where you want it to go, and I love that. I love putting some power into where your money's going. I mean, last year my wife and I paying taxes, I enjoy doing it just because I like books, managing my balance sheet, and managing my P&L regularly about the year. It's a good time for me to zero in on it. A lot of people don't. The vast majority of people do not think that way, um, but I do think that it's cool to know where your money's going. Literally, it's just in this frame of mind. Every year now, what you do is you say, "I made X. I have to pay Y." And you're so focused on what you have to pay that you don't think about where that payment is actually being directed. It's just to the IRS. It's just a blanket statement. I'm sending this to the IRS. And once I'm done, I wash my hands and I'm good to go. And I just continue making money, putting it into the engine and seeing what happens. So I like the idea that there is like just a tiny, tiny percent to give people a sense of ownership of where they can direct their funds. During Revenue Day, these projects will be highlighted, showing what exactly America's money was able to accomplish during the previous year. Initial profiles of the next year's projects will be announced so people can get excited for them. So, taxes are viewed as a burden instead of a contribution to our shared society. Tax day is dreaded, not celebrated. So, definitely love this proposal. Love the idea behind it. Love that this is by far inspired by Noam Chomsky and a lot of economists that have mentioned things like this in the past. So I was drawn towards this immediately when I was going through the different policies here. So this one is a touchy subject, economic crime. And this is something that a lot of people say that when it comes to Wall Street, the the there's a lot of issues here. There's a lot of issues where there's no accountability when massive corrections and recessions happen, like when in 2008, where it was just a series of bankers that were making the decisions and crashed an entire economy, and that's just brutal. Is very unfair to the entire. I mean, literally banks shut down, and then people couldn't get access to their money, and then when they did, some people were saying that, or actually no, in some cases, I knew someone or of someone in 2008 that had six figures in a bank, and Wachovia shut down, and they lost their money, got vaporized, and no accountability. The bank goes BK, and it just goes completely silent, takes the money, walks away, and you know they're washing their hands, getting jobs at other places instead, and the consumers are just ruined. Their money's just sank. So I firmly think that there was never any accountability for the subprime mortgage market, and this is a really kind of it hit it on a personal level. It hits home for me with the 2008 um, explosion that happened. Wall Street investment firms made billions of dollars off the subprime mortgage market, only to receive a bailout from the government, while millions of Americans suffered through the Great Recession. And when it comes to the bailout, there is a term called too big to fail. And if you have any questions about that, Google it. Too big to fail effectively means that if the banks are supporting enough of the economy, they cannot go under, or else the U.S. economy will take a too big of a hit. So if the bank goes under, then the U.S. economy is in dire straits, and the government doesn't want that to happen. I mean, nobody wants anybody to go out of business here. To clarify, nobody wants anybody to go out of business. But if they are too big, like if they are a massive organization, that supports 100 million people or 50 million people, whatever it is, then the government can't afford to have that go out of business. So there is a term, if you look it up, called too big to fail. And that kind of goes very close in tandem with what we're talking about here with economic crime on Andrew Yang's proposal. Those who made the decisions that led to the crisis not only got off scot free, but also became rich off of the spoils. The criminal justice system looked the other way because there was no mechanism to prosecute decision makers. Instead, financial crimes should be treated the same way as any other crime. Those perpetrating it should go to jail, and their punishment should reflect the amount of damage they've done to the economy and individuals they defrauded. Problems to be solved. People committing mass fraud are currently able to profit off of their crime with limited repercussions. So that leads me into my point here, where if a bank or a banker can launder $1 billion of, let's say, cartel money, probably shouldn't mention that on YouTube, but whatever. Let's say they launder some money, and the fines they know are going to be $50 million for or $100 million. Let's use round numbers. They're going to launder $500 million, and they know that the fee and the penalty that they're going to pay to, let's say, the SEC is $100 million. Every day of the week, they're going to perform that action because they're going to profit $400 million. $500 million laundered, $100 million penalty or fee for doing that, a slap on the wrist. Profit 500 minus 100 equals $400 million. And that's how we currently, our financial system operates. And I agree that we should hold people accountable. Um, do I think that there is some risk to this? Yes, I do. Do I think that we need a financial system? Yes, I do. Do I think that the current one is broken? Not necessarily fully broken, but I do think that there is drastic disruption that needs to happen. So, yeah, that's my opinion on this. Is that if you break the law, you break the law, and you need to be held accountable for it. And if you're socializing the losses or socializing the massive effect of your actions and the decisions you made and destroying people's lives and ruining their retirements, pensions, making them foreclose on houses, walk away from homes, you deserve to be held accountable for that. Like, there's no, yeah, there was no legal framework for them to get smacked. So I definitely think that the guiding principles here is fairness and justice is completely reasonable. So next up, we have capital gains and carried interest. If you guys want to check that out, you can. The top 20% own 92% of the stock market, which is absolutely crazy to think about. And this one, the main reason I want to talk about this is capital gains and carried interest are given favorable tax treatment relative to earned income from labor. So this is just a different way of looking at favorable tax treatment, and I don't want to dive too much down into that one. So financial transaction tax. This kind of coincides with what I was saying before about the financial crimes. When you have the financial transaction tax, every stock that someone purchases, every broker that purchases a stock, a small transaction goes out to the American people, like to the, let's say, a fund for education or a fund to make better healthcare system, or just basically better distributing out this transaction fee. And this is one of my favorite concepts that he's putting to the table, mainly because when we talk about transactions, we definitely think about a world where if a transaction from Amazon goes through, we should take a value added tax from that, distribute that out to the society where it's needed most. And that is paid for by the business, not the consumer. And this is, I mean, the consumer does pay some, but at the majority is trying to loop the business into holding themselves accountable for paying taxes because there are thousands of loopholes that they can use. And the don't get me wrong, consumers are going to pay tax, and the business is going to pay tax. A lot of these proposals, once again, is to get businesses and financial institutions and just institutions in general to pay taxes. There are too many loopholes, and there's if I own a business that's making $100 million and I report zero in income, uh, you know, there's no way. How do you tax me? The way is through the business tax and through value added taxes and something like this financial transaction. So, financial markets have grown dramatically over the past decade. Speculation in them has also led to bubbles that, when popped, caused untold damage to the world's economy. In order to raise revenue while also stimming, I can't even say that word. Some of the rampant speculation that can lead to financial collapse, a financial transaction tax should be levied on financial trades. This has been adopted by other countries quite successfully. The average holding time of a stock is now only 4 months. So that is quite mind blowing. Um, and I'm pretty sure it was 6 months, 2 years ago. I could, I'm not going to quote that just because I don't know the exact figures right off the top of my head. And this means that when every transaction is made, every single day, when the bell rings to open, to close, every transaction that takes place is going to be helping the economy. And I like this. I like this proposal a lot. Financial transactions and speculation cause risk to the economy, and that risk isn't covered by those who cause it. A lot of this is wrangling in the Wall Street situation here. Modern banking. This is the last one that I want to go over in this, mainly because my goal was to talk about the financial system, some of the loopholes that people are using, and just bring those to light, and also how some of these transactional um, tax situations can really help in entering us into the 21st century. And a lot of this is going to be per transaction base. I don't think that we're going to see like a hugely successful economy with all of this technology unless we do something about the transactions that are taking place every day at all hours of the day. I don't see that being possible. So let me just pull up the chat here. All right. Now we have volunteering at a local community center, mentoring an at risk youth, starting a book club, helping your friend recover from drug addiction. There are many actions that create positive social utility that are currently undercompensated. Enter modern time banking. Volunteer activity and community engagement would be tracked by an app and seeded initially by the government. After that, local administrations would oversee the program. You could earn time banking points through volunteering at a local shelter, participating in a town fair, coaching Little League, fixing a neighbor's appliance, working with those recovering from opioid addiction, tutoring a local student, and a range of other activities that can make your community stronger. So, needless to say, this is a very a positive piece here because it's rewarding people for doing good in society. And when you're tracking things that you're doing, now there's insurance companies like Oscar and all these companies that are tracking Fitbit activity. So they're giving you discounts on your insurance for staying healthy, for meeting your step goals every day. Like Fitbit, if you do 10,000 steps a day and you report it, just plugging into your insurance agent or insurance company, they're going to give you a discount. I don't remember how much the ones that are doing it now are doing, but that is rolled out. It started with Oscar, I believe, and then it's now rolled out to dozens of different insurance companies that are doing it. Employers are doing it. So they're rewarding you for being healthy with Fitbit and these tracking services. So what this proposal is saying is, why can't we basically bank our time for helping the community, coaching little league, volunteering, helping people out in the community, lifting others up, and in turn, we keep track of it and we get rewarded. So we've seen power of these award systems to drive behavior through online communities, free sandwich fund cards and special statuses, Yelp Elite, Foursquare mayors, etc. Signing up for an account would allow you to track your running tally along with an unspent total. As noted above, you can offer time banking points to a neighbor for watering your plants or taking your mail. So it's a very, like, a little bit of a dystopian idea, I will say. It's pretty gnarly, but when you have this cohesive effort as a society, you are going to come in to a world where people are actually wanting to help each other because there's an incentive. And when you deal in incentives, I'm very, very well researched in incentives, and clearly Yang is, and a lot of his supporters are. Incentives are what make the world go round. They keep people in motion. They keep the markets moving. They keep humans doing what humans do, is just keeping people incentivized. And incentivized economies are how we operate. We do it now with money, but there's so many different ways that you can do it. And this is like a super intense way of implementing an application where you track everything that you're doing for each other. And the idea is that it would spark a lot of people helping each other. My one criticism is, when you give people a tool, they're going to abuse it. That's just raw facts. That's just how, looking at the tax situation, just as an example we were talking about earlier, when you give people, we say, hey, we're going to tax your income. And they say, okay, great. I'm going to have a business that just takes all of my transactions and I'm going to report zero income. That's an example of a system that's being gamed by humans. And I'm not trying to be negative about how we distribute help in our social construct, but I do think that there is something to be said about an entire generation of people coming up that just find loopholes and a way to game the system. So I like this, love the idea behind it. It is a very dystopian, pie in the sky vision, and I like the incentives that he wants to put forward to help each other out, almost like a bartering system, removing the need to rely heavily on the monetary system, whereas it's more of like a favor-based bartering system. And I like that. I like that he's doing that. So problems to be solved: Americans spend less time interacting with their community. Um, Americans feel disconnected from their neighbors. American rate of volunteering have steadily declined over the past decade. For soft policy initiatives such as fighting obesity, there's no individual incentive to engage with that initiative. So it's a really interesting concept. Really, really interesting. I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into this because it it makes sense to get people engaged in the society, but it's like a Hail Mary throw, saying like we want everybody to be super engaged, and the world is leaning much heavier towards individualism, people just locking their doors, spending all day inside, and things like that, and spending all day on the internet. So really interesting. I like it. I really would love to see something like this, but it is a very hefty policy to put forward. Yeah, and that's it for this. I love the local journalism fund and a bunch of other these. I'm going to go through a lot of the other ones, like voting at the age of 16, regulating AI, and things like that, that he has on here, because he has a ton of policies, and I think that it's great discussion, great material to talk about. And I really agree with a lot of these from an economics perspective. And I can see, having studied this, I see the inspiration that he's getting from the econ theories that are in the books that I've read and I'm sure he's read. So I like that. I love the thought behind this. I love the effort that's put behind this to basically bubble issues to the top that many people aren't talking about. And the time banking thing is just a really edgy concept. And I wanted to leave that as the final one. And we'll talk about more in the near future, but that's pretty much it for this. Talking about the financial transactions, the economic crimes, making taxes fun again, because they are something that people should be celebrated, aka Norm Chomsky's idea. And that's it for this episode. If you guys want to subscribe to the Sound Money podcast, the link to that is going to be in the description below. So, would appreciate any love on that. You guys have been amazing so far. I've seen so much love and support for the podcast. I got some awesome people that I'm interviewing over the next few weeks that are doing amazing things with technology, hyper lean companies where they're leveraging technology in a way that we haven't really seen before to grow these businesses. So that is it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys on the next